We are looking at the area between St. Mark's and Perry, like literally midway, equidistant between St. Mark's and Perry. How far is that from where you are, and what kind of population, what kind of buildup in residential areas? It seems like it's a pretty rural spot in there. So if you were to get landfall, that looks like it might be a better spot than obviously closer to Tallahassee.
Yeah, we've talked about this before. I mean, with Debbie, that was actually one of the things that was sort of helpful, was that this is a very rural part of the state. The Big Bend, or the Nature Coast, right, is fairly sparse. Perry is not a very big community. It's about an hour away from where I'm at right now. St. Mark's is about 40 minutes or so south of us. Those are both relatively small communities, and they have done everything that they can to prepare. Perry, in particular, is in Taylor County. I mentioned that sort of grim warning from the county officials there, telling people to mark themselves in case of a disaster. But a lot of that was in the coastal community, part of that county. That's where they're really worried about that kind of thing. 20-foot storm surge, potentially that is not survivable. We've heard so many experts say that. And you're right. I don't know what's going to happen with this storm. Nobody knows for sure. I sure hope it doesn't turn into a Cat 5, and I'm happy to hear a weather expert such as yourself say that doesn't sound likely given the short amount of time before landfall. But it is, again, on everybody's mind here at the EOC. These are some of the hardest working people in the state. In fact, they've brought in sleeping bags and cots because they are spending the night here, at least for tonight, maybe for a couple of days, just waiting to make sure that everything's back online, that the state is as good as it can be as quickly as possible after the storm passes.
Yeah, and we're looking at the radar right now, and there's definitely a blowup of lightning in the northern eye wall. So, even if it doesn't go Cat 5, is there really much of a difference from 145 to 155? And in reality, it is going to be devastating, and that's, right there, that is it. Again, Forrest, thank you very much. Be safe out there. I'm sure we'll be checking back in with you later on tonight and again tomorrow. So as we continue to look at the Bay Area's issues, totally different than the area we were just talking about. And, we've been talking about Florida State and FAMU and Gainesville, the bigger universities in that part of the state. And FSU is right on the fringe of the heavy stuff, as is FAMU. Gainesville is actually more on the fringe on the right side of it. So honestly, I think Gainesville probably would see a little bit less impact than FSU or FAMU would. We've got a lot of parents who are obviously Gators and a lot of parents who are Noles. And, at this point, we definitely are right on the fringe, kind of in between the two. For us, we've been saying this from the beginning, we will not see sustained hurricane force winds, and we haven't. But unfortunately, what we are going to see is flooding. We're already seeing it, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. But we are getting closer to that time. If you look at the high tides, all right? So these high tides vary wildly. A lot of these from Sarasota to St. Pete are closer to 2 a.m. Even Clearwater Beach was showing at 2 a.m. I've had some areas showing high tides between 10 and midnight. Honestly, anytime between 10 p.m., 11 p.m., and 1 or 2 a.m., you're going to see high tides. And they vary, obviously, because the water peaks in certain locations based on the geography. But at this point, and this is, by the way, what Jason and I were just looking at, yikes. So you see our area, it's moving away. The worst is over in terms of the wind. We've had winds gusting up to 82 miles an hour. That was in St. Pete. But we haven't had the sustained winds that typically cause a lot of widespread damage. We're getting reports of trees down. We're getting reports of pool cages down. Unfortunately, as Wendy and Nadine have mentioned, there was a fatality from a sign that fell off of I-4 when you had a wind gust. But boy, this right here is what concerns me, because we talked about this about 3 hours ago. Remember when there were winds of about 100 and what was it at that point, Jason? It was it going before Cat? Yeah, it was before it went Cat 4. It was like 115, 120. And we saw this blow up of lightning, which almost always means strengthening. Well, now all of a sudden you have a major blow up in the northern eye wall. And remember, this is rotating, okay? So I hate to say this, but in the western eye wall, that might very well be very, very close to Tallahassee. We're talking, there's such a difference in 10 miles. And you think, how is that even possible? Well, when you're looking at a hurricane force winds extend 60, 65 miles out. The maximum winds, the strongest, the extreme winds probably only 5 to 6 miles, maybe 7 miles from the center. A very small area. So yeah, they're going to get, Tallahassee will see hurricane force winds. But if they can just scoot by the western eye wall, even if you're talking 4 or 5 miles, you might see a drop in 30-mile-an-hour winds in that area. It's going to be that close. But we can't candy coat this regardless of whether they get Cat 4, strong Cat 4 winds or not. They're still going to have powerful hurricane force winds. Now, the arrow that points to Citrus County, the eye is 82 miles away and moving northeast. So again, hurricane force winds extend 60, 65 miles out. If the center moving away is over 80 miles away, they will not see sustained hurricane force winds. And obviously for the Bay Area, it's now quickly moving away, nearly 100 miles. So the winds are becoming less of an issue, but obviously the surge is now absolutely the biggest issue, and one that I think Wendy and Nadine were talking about a little earlier ago. That's what we're going to remember from this storm. I mean, whether we remember it like storms like Ian and like Charlie, like Michael, remains to be seen. But what we have now is a strengthening hurricane up until landfall. And that, unfortunately, is the worst case scenario. You don't have a storm that's showing weakening. You have a storm that's getting stronger as it's approaching the coastline. And that's really the last thing that you want to see. I mean, it really is. We are going to be getting extreme wind warnings coming up for these areas in the next hour.
Just issued.
We just had one. Yep. There you go. So, and that's really the worst advisory that you will see. We had them in Polk County with Irma. You get what's known as an extreme wind warning. Those are usually winds well over 100 miles an hour. So in that green box right there, those are extreme wind warnings. So in these areas, and that would include Tallahassee, you're expecting winds greater than 100 miles an hour coming up any minute. I mean, within an hour, but obviously you're already seeing the leading edge. And then you got this. And I think the reason they probably issued it is because of this, because that is just the worst thing to see, an intensifying storm as it gets closer. And you know, you think, again, what's the difference between a Cat 5 at 155, 156, or a Cat 4 at 145? There's no difference. I mean, it's 10 miles an hour difference. Look at the last wind report. Newport Richey, Spring Hill, winds gusting to 79 miles an hour. Gusting, not sustained, but regardless, that's some serious, serious wind. Still 66 in Tampa. Now, even Sarasota and Bradenton in the upper 60s. And that's more than likely because this storm is getting stronger. And that's the problem. Now, as it moves inland, it will start to weaken, pretty quickly as it pulls away. But still, we are just looking at what could very well be for the Bay Area a record breaker because of the flooding. I mean, we've talked about that forever. I mean, that is where this has been the biggest issue with this storm for days on end. But yet, it's hard to wrap our head around these kind of numbers, right? When you see flooding potential, 8 to 12 feet, like, I mean, what does that even mean? I mean, I get it, we all understand what 8 to 12 feet is, but how many times have we seen anything like that? So it's just really hard to grasp it. And I think that's going to continue until the next 4 hours, because we're going to be seeing that over the next 4 hours in our coastal areas. Winds of 140 north-northeast. It is going quickly. That's good news in the sense that it will be out of here quicker, but boy, there's your track. I mean, I think we were saying earlier today, western Taylor County, and I think that's exactly where this is going to make landfall. And you can see right there, it is getting very, very close to land. Technically, you get landfall when the center of the eye crosses land. And we are almost there. There will be yes, you'll get a new track in an hour and a half, but by then it will already have made a landfall. So there is our biggest issues, obviously the surge, and this is going to continue until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. I would expect by 1 or 2, by then, this thing is already probably in Georgia. So we're going to see things improve just because it's moving away so quickly. But still, because it's a big storm and covers a large area, you're going to continue to see that push. Maybe not to the extreme that we've had the last couple of hours, but these numbers are certainly within play. And even the ones on the right side, which I will be honest, I mean, for the last couple of days, I was leaning more toward the left side. I'm more of a glasses half full kind of guy. And when I see numbers like 8 to 12 feet, that's incredibly rare. But every now and again, you get record-breaking numbers, and it is certainly possible we could see at least some spots, not everybody, but at least some spots with numbers on this high. I want to go back to Jason now and talk more about that extreme wind warning for areas up north.
Yes.